Oh, that's such a pretty stinger. There we go. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, looks good.
sure.
Hi, everybody who's not watching and watching. This is Dr. Aimee Tsuchiya, who told me that she never really goes by doctor. Why is that?
I had a stigma put in my mindset a long time ago about doctors or people who actually do medical things, which I
Oh,
don't.
well, you could start doing medical things.
No.
Yeah, no. I think didn't they come later though? They were.
It's entirely possible, yeah.
The doctor of philosophy may have existed before we started calling them doctors.
Could well be, yes. I don't know the whole history.
Yeah. I took a history of higher education class. It was super interesting. I just want to read the book again. Goes all the way back to medieval times. Don't remember any of it. Yeah. So, you're a doctor of piano.
I guess so, yeah.
I'm pretending like I'm asking a question, but I know you're a doctor of piano. Why?
Why?
Yeah, why? What's the point of a doctor of piano?
Well, at one point in time, it was certainly thought that the more degrees you had, sort of the more qualified you might be for, future employment, I suppose. That might still be the case.
Oh,
But I think also, I honestly just enjoyed school. So I was kind of fine to stick around school and learn more,
you just
more
want to be
things.
in school from like 5 to like 25?
Or beyond, possibly.
Yeah. I did mine. I did a doctorate in clarinet, and it took me almost exactly 10 years to do my doctorate in clarinet, which is the people who were in charge were definitely saying, you have to get out of this program.
For sure,
and
yeah.
finish." And I was like, I'm writing as fast as I can. But they kept me around after that to still teach, so that's pretty good.
There you go.
So your doctorate makes you more eligible to teach a lot?
Possibly, depending on the institution hiring and what specifically they're hoping to hire for. So if it's something that might require teaching more academic-based classes or things to that nature, they might prefer somebody with more academic background, I suppose.
For you, did it help?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think it doesn't hurt. I don't think it ever really hurts, but it just depends on the job market at the time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're teaching like a lot,
Yes.
like a lot.
Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah.
Sometimes I email you asking if you have time for a student, and you say, I have this 1 hour on a Wednesday in November. And, but I mean, that means that people like studying with you. All the students that I talk to, your adult students, are like, I love Aimee.
Well,
That's the way they say it.
That's very nice to hear.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's nice to be appreciated, I guess. I wouldn't know. What do you teach mostly adults? Do you teach kids? Anything?
Yeah, all of the above. I've never really calculated the percentages, but I do have a fair number of adult students, and I also have a fair number of kids under college age, I suppose, that I teach.
Under college age, so like 18 and under. Do you have any college age students right now?
Well, sort of, but not necessarily those pursuing musical degrees at the moment. So it might be college age kids who are doing it as a side thing or something.
Like they want to do it just for enjoying and loving the instrument?
Yeah, I would say. Maybe.
No,
yeah.
not a bad reason.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nobody watching any chat at the moment, so it's just fine.
Okay.
I will check Facebook because I figured out how to get it on Facebook. Nobody's commenting, so
Okay.
We're safe.
Good.
Nobody's screaming at us on Facebook.
Good.
What I had asked you to do this because we're trying to get NEC streaming and teaching and show that we have lots and lots of teachers, and our teachers are human beings and mostly not really scary. I have almost never found you really scary.
Oh, almost. Okay.
Almost. I would say we did Messiaen, the Messiaen Quartet.
Oh, yeah.
There were scary parts near the beginning of that.
Sure.
And I think a good bit of that was my incompetence at playing proper rhythms.
I think it's just the piece that instills that fear in us.
Maybe. I also had like John Heiss was our coach, and
remember.
John Heiss was very like, no, that rhythm's not quite right, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
And he was very nice about it, but incredibly persistent.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that kind of patience.
Yeah, John Heiss was amazing. He had an ear like hardly anyone I ever knew, I think.
There's that story that Stravinsky called him the pitch doctor.
Oh, that's a good story.
You've heard the story?
I don't think I have.
So the story, as far as I remember it, and you know, it's been over 20 years since I heard the story. Not over. I think it's been around 20 years since I heard the story. Was that he was doing Stravinsky's Huxley variations, and he was playing in the orchestra. Stravinsky was conducting, and I guess Stravinsky didn't conduct most of the rehearsals. Probably Bob Kraft. And John Heiss is, you know, so politely playing in the flute section, and these Huxley variations, I think they were the first 12-tone piece that Stravinsky wrote.
Okay.
And Heiss was like, "Oh, this is 12-tone," and they were giving the premiere, was writing down notes of what he thought the wrong notes were. Wow. And this should be this, and this should be that, because it's a 12-tone piece, and only John Heiss seems to be able to 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, and just cycles.
Amazing.
And he gave that list, and I think it may have been to Bob Kraft, and he's like, okay. And he takes it to Stravinsky, and Stravinsky, it's like, yeah, whatever. They go to break, and then finally Stravinsky's going through it and going through the score and going, oh, crap. Probably in Russian or French he's saying this. But basically he comes back up to stage and goes, which one of you is the pitch doctor? It's like, they're all right. Amazing. Yeah. And that was horrifying, because I heard that, I think, before I really worked with him a lot. And it's one of the reasons I think he, Steve Drury, and Tom Martin are like the three NEC reasons that I think I'm still in the business and still playing and still, that I can't blame them for all of this equipment and this particular thing. But I'm going to ask you a lot about that stuff, but you had something that you wanted to teach.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I thought I would just share something that observationally through my years of teaching, I've kind of come to see a lot and wanted to address as a particularity, both in terms of playing and maybe some practice techniques to work through this kind of thing.
Should I switch over to the fancy setup so people can see the keyboard? And
sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can do this properly. Oh yeah, that's good. We can see knees. Nobody get too, I don't know. And the keyboard and your face. So I'll try not to interrupt very much unless you want me to.
Okay. Well, so Chris, as a clarinetist, you're well familiar with the idea that most instruments play a line at a time of notes, right? A single line of notes, generally speaking. Piano is one of the exceptions, not the only one, but certainly one of the more prolific ones that we play and encounter. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was how to feel like it's still linear thinking or horizontal thinking that we can do when we play the piano, which deals actually quite a lot with vertical moments. Vertical meaning that you have notes that go together as chords or just as moments in the music. That kind of thing can often get stuck with people who are not as comfortable at the instrument yet. Maybe they're still in an early learning phase, or maybe it's something that they just haven't explored a lot. So I wanted to talk about how to think of music a little bit more linearly, a little bit more horizontally, and how to practice for that goal. Because ultimately, music, by the fact that it's temporal, is linear. It goes along in time, not just moment by moment. So I'm going to use a very famous, very often taught piece as an example. Maybe I can share some ideas in terms of how to approach this kind of playing through this piece. So this is Chopin's Waltz in A minor. I'm just going to play a little bit of the beginning part just to give a sound so that we recognize it. So that's just the opening phrase, obviously. So like a lot of piano music, our hands are both occupied with different things that come together, again, horizontally at first, but linearly overall, to make the music happen in phrases. Phrases meaning like musical ideas or sentences. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit was what can happen as we're learning pieces like this if we're less comfortable, generally speaking, or less familiar with pianism in general. One of the things I see a lot is, in terms of vertical thinking, we often get stuck in moments and kind of think of things either by boxes of notes, because our music is written in boxes of notes called measures, or in simple, even just notes themselves, looking at each note as it happens and how our hands have to go together, one note at a time. So that obviously can break up some of the linearity of the phrase. If I just get stuck here or here, and then think about, oh, now what do I have to do? You can hear it getting chopped up as we go, right? So what I like to explore a little bit with my students is the idea that practicing hands separately a little bit is always helpful because your hands are doing two different things, but then also ways to incorporate the hands together so that there's still some motion happening in one hand while the other hand is maybe more stationary as it needs to be. So for instance, we see at the beginning of this piece and throughout that the left hand has a pattern of playing a low note followed by two chords higher and then another low note and two chords higher. And that's often the pattern of a waltz, right? So feeling like we're never stuck in one spot and then thinking of what to do next as a separate thing, but feeling like there's a connection horizontally from one thing to the next thing you're about to do. If you can see.
Question?
Yes, questions.
Sorry, from the peanut gallery.
Yes.
The thing that you're talking about, are you talking about like feeling a connection from one low note to the next low note to the next low note? Or are you thinking from the low note to the two chords and then to the next low note? Is it one bum, 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 or bum, bum?
Yeah.
They can't see me, so they have no idea what hand motions I'm making.
Yeah, these are all good questions. I'm speaking firstly on the note-to-note approach because that's how we sort of have to start. We build the piece sort of one note to the next. Certainly, as we get more comfortable with a piece and better, we feel like we can think of it in terms of the phrase and how one low note might take us to the next low note, might take us to the next low note, and then to the final low note of the phrase. But that would sort of be the next step. So I'm just addressing sort of the very basics of it to begin with.
That's what the doctors do, is they get...
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, you get a doctor's degree if you can think above that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sorry. I'll stop interrupting.
All right, so the idea of practicing the hand that has the most motion at the moment, which is the left hand, especially because it's in a pattern, by itself, but always feeling like you're never still. It's never just play this and then think about what comes next, but you're thinking from the first note you play about where it goes. So there's a sense of not just sitting or not moving this way, but moving this way always, and possibly back as we go. So there's always a sense of motion. Sometimes I refer to it as choreography, just because there is a certain sense in choreography as well, if you think about ice skaters or ballet dancers or whatever, how there's always a fluidity to the dance steps, right? Something that they have to sort of feel perhaps in slow motion at first, which is another way to practice something like this in slow motion, before you can get to the point where you can take it at whatever tempo you feel is appropriate for the piece, okay? So then, the added challenge of having your other hand doing something entirely different, right, causes another question. How do I practice that? Because once I add my right hand, it's hard to think about both hands at the same time. So again, if you approach it a little bit like choreography between now both of your hands, right? So as I start this piece, my right hand in this particular instance doesn't have a lot to do. As long as I know my first few notes are basically in one place, then I can kind of focus on the fact that my left hand has to jump. So I'm going to isolate this moment of my first jump to make sure I feel like there's some fluidity here and not a feeling of this is the first note that goes together and now this is the second note. So it's perfectly fine at first to just practice something where you're isolating those moments. Once you get through it, then you can think about the next time you have to move, which is back down. And you can even just sort of make sure you stop there. So again, sort of isolating it, interestingly, vertically at first to create what will eventually become a horizontal tapestry. Right, so if I can arrive there comfortably now, I can try that measure. Same thing, I want to feel like my left hand is freed up to move. And then if I can do that, I go on to the spot where I move again. And then once I've done that a little bit, maybe I try to do more than just one measure at a time. So this kind of thing, it takes some patience and it takes some kind of different approaches sometimes, but ultimately you're training your hands to be able to be in motion a little bit more freely, which will hopefully carry across to other things that you would choose to play.
So you're saying that for piano at least, like this physical motion and fluidity is equaling musical motion and fluidity-ish?
For sure, yeah. Again, you know, music as an art form is linear. It has to be fluid to some extent. Most of the time, one note isn't in existence all by itself. It takes us through other notes. It leads us along the way. So if you feel like the physicality of how you're playing is in that same regard, with that same sort of thought process, then it can help feel like the music is always sort of moving along through the phrases, as opposed to feeling like elements are sort of solo moments in time that you have to kind of approach one thing at a time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like it becomes easier to play musically if you learn the choreography.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I guess we do something similar as a clarinet player. It's just I'm moving only these guys, but the more I move with this, probably the more problems I'm gonna have.
Well, and certainly, you know, every instrument has a variety of combinations of things you have to do physically to make it work, right? Piano, I find by the fact that, again, you're sort of doing different things with your two hands at the same time poses an extra challenge for a lot of people in that it's easy to start to feel like you're trying to make sure each moment when your hands have to go together is just so before you think about the next moment. So what I'm trying to encourage is the idea that these moments have to connect, even if you're at first learning the notes sort of singly or how they sound horizontally. Ultimately, you want to practice them so that they always tether to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And the best way to do that is also to, early on in my opinion, add that sort of physicality to it so that it doesn't ever feel like you're just dealing with one note at a time, but there's a sense that it's connected to what has to happen next.
When you're learning something really, okay, so I happen to know that you're really good at learning music really fast.
Well, maybe relatively.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have to learn something quickly to play with a violinist, you can learn it fairly quickly, certainly faster than, say, somebody who has only studied, let's say, Chopin their whole life. Solo stuff. You're particularly good at playing with other human beings.
Sure.
How do you do all of that if you got to learn it in like 3 days?
Well, so obviously the approach I'm talking about is specific maybe to somebody who wouldn't try to learn something more complex in 3 days to play with other people.
So this is like maybe beginners, intermediate. It's at a certain point, like, where does that end? The intermediate, and somewhere around people start paying you a lot of money.
Well, I think, it just depends on the person and where they are in their learning process, I suppose. So some people, if they, are able to practice and play regularly, and they are very conscientious about certain aspects of how they practice, I think they can move along to the point where they start to learn things more quickly and learn things that are more complex, for sure. But I think too that it can't be underestimated that, there's a lot of hours that go into getting to a point where you can learn something in 3 days, certainly.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I know I just keep interrupting you, so I should
that's
stop
great.
doing that. Was there stuff that I cut off that you hadn't gotten to yet?
Well, I wanted to mention one other thing about this. So it's sort of a little bit smaller scale because it doesn't deal with quite so much jumping, but more just how we use our hands and fingers on the piano. So what I also see a lot is that when we play something in what's considered a position, we can start to end up thinking that things are in positions, and we move our hand accordingly. So for instance, the beginning of this melody, so I can move to a new position here to continue the melody. There has to be some movement here in some form in order to get from the start of the melody to that second measure of the melody. However, I, again, would encourage people to think of things a little bit more in motion, and that has to do with our fluidity and flexibility just within our hand. So rather than feel like this is the start in one position and then moving up for the next position, I would suggest trying to feel like we're in motion early. So if you can see the difference in how I do my fingers the first way, where I'm thinking in positions, you can see my fingers are sort of frozen in their starting place. Everything is in the same note that I played originally. And then I just move the whole hand up. However, again, gives you a little bit more fluidity and a little bit more timeliness as you go along. If we can feel like as we're going, our hand is able to stay fluid in motion in order to get us from point A to point B. So my thumb contracts and starts to move towards the note that I need it to be at in the next position, if you want to call it a position. Do you see? So often I see when I have students who play scales or arpeggios, this sort of frozen hand aspect, especially with the thumb. The thumb tends to be our most challenging finger, maybe because we often don't even think of it as a finger because it's a thumb, but it is a finger on the piano as it happens. So we want our thumb to be a little bit more reactive when we're playing our scales and arpeggios, such that it's helping us kind of climb along in the direction that we need it to go, as opposed to feeling like we're jumping from one thing to the next. Jumping is always riskier when you need to do it. Sometimes you have to do it, but if you can find ways to make it a little bit more fluid and linear in your approach, it gives you a greater sense of ease, of control, of accuracy, and ultimately should help with the tone that you're getting from the instrument as well, as opposed to jumping. Do you see?
Those are some accents.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me, I'm going to try this, see if this works. Oh, fancy. It sounds to me, now I've got you and I've got the keyboard and I'm getting too fancy for myself. It sounds to me like what you're talking about as a position is like a snapshot in, like a, what were those stop motion graphics? You know, like stop claymation,
Like claymation,
that kind of thing.
yeah.
So it never looks fluid. It's just, but you're looking to fill in all that, what happens between this position and this position. It's actually all motion that you're never actually stopping.
Exactly, yeah. And that, again, can be hard sometimes for anybody who's, you know, maybe not either experienced with this kind of practice or perhaps are relatively, again, new to playing the piano, because we do sort of take an approach where everything is built off of individual notes or individual chords. So we start to think of it very vertically. So again, trying to feel like a little bit of physical flexibility and fluidity can help bridge the gap actually between elements that we play on the instrument into longer lines and phrases, help us get around a little bit.
How do you practice it?
Lots of different ways. So the thing that I'm talking about right now with the thumb is I would encourage always slow motion. It's a lot like choreography. If you ever have seen figure skaters prepping for a routine, they're always going through all of those motions, well, off the ice first of all, but in slow motion, because there's an amount of sort of just physical teaching, you know, a little bit of muscle memory you're starting to incorporate. And that's best done in slow motion, I think, a lot of the time before we try to do it quickly. Often if we ignore that step, we end up going back to habits we have from before. So I would encourage a slow motion approach where we are specifically focusing on how relaxed and fluid and flexible can I get my thumb to feel. So let's say you're practicing arpeggios. So if you can see, my thumb is well under my hand before I need it to be in the next position or in the next place that I need my thumb, as opposed to doing that. You have to be conscientious of this kind of approach at first, so you can focus on one particular element that we don't maybe often focus on in everyday life, and then gradually see if you can kind of speed it up to the point where it starts to feel like your thumb isn't an anchor for you, okay? So that's one thing. Same with scales, right? So when I play a scale, again, my thumb is trying to come around and under before I need it, as opposed to just at the last moment. So it might be something that feels more natural for some people to do right away, and it might be something that's relatively foreign at first, but it's not either way something that is prohibitive. I think it's something that if you can kind of start to incorporate that sort of flexibility and thinking, it actually frees you up and hopefully will start to become a little bit of almost a habit. It's just like when you have young children learning to play the piano for the first time. Telling them to play with curved fingers isn't necessarily the first thing kids learn to do. They want to have straight fingers, because how often do we have to use curved fingers in real life? Even though very naturally when our hands are relaxed, our fingers tend to stay curved naturally as opposed to straight. But once you get used to an approach where your fingers are round at the piano, it's not something you have to be so conscientious of anymore. It becomes a habit. So that's what we're trying to develop, is sort of better habits through slower, conscientious approaches at first.
I will say conscientious, slow approaches to learning anything have always been my downfall.
Yeah. Well, there's you know, an old tradition, especially among, I think, people who go into music, you know, we learn to put in the hours, right? We
Right.
practice and practice and practice, but we don't always practice smart, I would say.
Absolutely not.
Right? So if you drill down the same thing over and over again, but you're doing it maybe not in the best way, you're just mostly training yourself to do it not in the best way. So if you take the time to approach something slowly and carefully at first, hopefully it'll shave off some of the time and energy spent on trying to get something the way you want it to be.
Have you read Molly Gebrian's book?
I don't think so.
Do you
But
know-
I'm familiar with who she is, yes.
Yeah, she's like all over the place here and talking about practicing. And
Yeah.
we've had her as a guest in Adult Ed a few times. In fact, we did one thing that was in person and online at the same time. And we had something like 12 people and online and like 5 in class. It was great and lots of good questions. But just like how to basically hack your brain and your neurology so you're not wasting your time.
Yeah.
And I just remember, again, playing Messiaen and practicing, like, for real, like 5-6 hours a day, and during the summer longer. And no wonder I had tendonitis
Right.
and no social life.
Right. There's that too.
Yeah, my social life was being in rehearsals, and if I didn't suck that day, if I wasn't terrible, then I was just all right. I'm feeling pretty good, but no, I gotta go practice.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that was-
Yeah, it's a real balancing act. I mean, practically speaking, most people don't have 5-6 hours to spend practicing a
Absolutely
day,
not.
right? And even those of us in conservatory, even if we have 5 or 6 hours to spend, you do risk things either taking a long time to learn correctly or injury because of overuse. And maybe it doesn't need to be that way. Maybe we can find ways to sort of be a little bit smarter with how we approach things. And I think patience is sometimes a challenge for people. Most people are impatient, right? Whether they're professional musicians, conservatory musicians, amateur musicians. We want to play the piece. Oh, I love this piece. I want to play this piece. And we don't think about all of the little moments that we could be spending just refining certain things right out of the gate so that we can play the piece maybe even better, maybe even sooner.
Cristiano Suzuki in the chat asked, says, thank you for this. I'm curious to know if she's learning a new instrument now, and if so, how is it going? I guess that probably has to do with, you're talking about like,
Like as an
like
adult
learning.
learner.
Yeah. And do you play anything other than piano?
So as a kid, I played violin for a few years. Well, I was okay. It was just for a few years. I wasn't off, taking auditions for orchestras or anything. I did try to teach myself electric bass, actually, strangely enough, a few
When
years
was that?
ago.
A few years
A few
ago?
years
Like
ago.
COVID times, you were like,
It might have been or pre-COVID, somewhere around there. It can be kind of fun. You get sort of interested in doing different things as a musician if you're musically minded or whatever. But at the moment, I'm not trying to teach myself or pursue anything new. It's sort of just a way for me to make sure that I'm spending my time the best way I can to learn things fast, maybe, right? So that, because our time is always limited. So that's just something I've noticed as a teacher, but also, interestingly, the more you teach, the more you understand what you need to do for yourself as well.
Right. Cristiano followed up with, when you were learning the piano, like as if you ever stopped, did you ever consider quitting?
No, I never did.
When did you start?
I started when I was 5 or 6, somewhere in there.
5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. I will say that I started clarinet at like 12, 13, 14, something like that.
Yeah, sure.
That whole area was a haze, middle school. 5 or 6 years old, like that's pretty young. But don't some kids start even younger now?
Oh, sure, yes. Some kids start at 2 or 3, I've even heard sometimes, yeah.
Cristiano, do you play piano? I believe we've talked before. What do you play, and when did you start? So 5 or 6 years old, were you like, woo, piano, and that was it? You were sold, or were you like, ugh, my parents are making me learn piano?
I think, like most kids, I had days where I would prefer to be outside playing with my friends than having to practice. But I also at times remember having a lot of fun at the instrument, like
Yeah.
enjoying learning pieces and how to do them well.
So that means you had a really good teacher?
At first, my teacher was just our backyard neighbor, truthfully. She, played organ sometimes for the local church, and she knew how to play piano to some extent, so I would have my lessons with her as a kid. And eventually, through different people that I met in my musical childhood, they sort of directed me to better teachers to where
Right.
I got to learn things even more
So maybe
appropriately.
your backyard neighbor was like good at maybe sparking the interest.
Maybe.
Not teaching you Prokofiev concerto at the age of 5.
Not so much, no.
Cristiano said learning the flute, and at that point, becoming more frustrated than having fun. But learned organ as a teenager, and that was fun.
Nice.
I don't know. My frustrations with playing the clarinet are only clarinet related if my clarinet is in crappy condition and I need to go to the shop. Otherwise, it's not like that. Have you ever been like frustrated? I mean, with a piano that works?
I think we can all get frustrated if we allow ourselves to. I'm very much a problem solver, so I like to, when I'm working on something, if I find something is extra challenging or extra difficult to approach, I like to sort of take it apart and figure out why and what I can do to make it easier, I suppose.
So what you're saying is your computer is in pieces on your...
Not quite. But, I certainly see that with students of all ages, that sort of like you hit a wall sort of somehow. And
Yeah.
that's when hopefully, as a teacher, we can kind of come in and say, well, okay, let's just take this apart and approach it differently. But again, you have to be willing to not try to play everything all at once. I think sometimes you really have to break things down. Which does require some amount of patience, especially when you're training yourself to do anything physical that's new. That can sometimes take extra time, layering on top of it all of the intellectual stuff of having to read notes, especially if you're still getting used to reading notes, reading 2 sets of notes for each hand, et cetera.
Right.
So there's lots of reasons why you might get frustrated. But again, I think if you allow yourself a little bit of, a patient approach and dissect things down a little bit, it can sometimes fix the issues that will allow you to approach something more easily. But it does mean you have to not want to just play right out of the gate.
My favorite thing is, all right, you screwed it up. How did you screw it up? Reproduce the screw up. F it up properly, and then get really good at that. It doesn't take me much time to get good at effing something up. I'm trying to keep my language clean, if you can't tell.
Sure, yeah.
This is my version of clean. And then, okay, so how do I not do that then? I'm going to do this other thing. Cristiano's on a roll here. Because I said something about the accents when you were talking about your thumb. Said, you made a comment about accent playing the piano. Could you show some accents with the piano?
Sure. Well, so accents sometimes are purposeful. Sometimes we do want to accent things. And the variation of how much accent can be sometimes musical, but sometimes accidental. So for instance, the example I was showing with having a more rigid thumb produced an accent that was undesirable, right? Because I'm sort of throwing my hand or jumping and landing on a finger that's, quite frankly, a very big, clumsy finger for most of us, right? Our thumb is not our most elegant finger.
Speak for yourself. I got French manicure.
So that kind of accent is maybe undesirable in most contexts, right? When I was playing the Chopin, you might have some slight emphasis or accent on important notes, like the low notes in the left hand, because those serve as sort of the root of the harmony. But notice, I'm not trying to overemphasize because I don't want it to stick out in the texture. I just want it to be a little bit richer in sound. So those would be different kinds of accents. There are others, I'm sure. It depends on the composer. Some composers build in accents for rhythmic purposes. I think it just depends on what it is, the effect that you're trying to go for or avoid, as it were.
Cristiano says thank you.
Very welcome.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in like when people come in and they have questions. Cristiano, I think, well, I know I've seen you before, and I was threatening everybody in the chat and saying we're going to have other musicians in, and they're going to have lots, and going to play other instruments and have expertise in things where I don't know anything. So thank you for coming, and thanks for asking questions. Keep it up. We have to make them, any guests we have to make them work for it. We don't want them to just be bored while they're here. So keep asking questions, and anybody else who's watching on, we got Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Ask the questions. I will say Facebook's a little wonky, so if we're not getting your questions, it's because I haven't quite figured out the tech, because I'm not that kind of genius yet.
Yet.
Yeah. So for us, accents are often, we'll look at the music and we'll just think, okay, it just needs to be bigger. It just needs to be louder. And then with clarinet players, I'm often saying, wait, what does it literally mean? Is it just different somehow? Is it bigger? Is it a different color? And then what inevitably happens, and I would say close to 100% of the time, clarinet players go, and they get more tense, and the sound they produce is actually smaller and more brittle. And when you hear it without seeing it, you're like, there's no accent in there, it actually gets smaller. When you see them do it, you're like, oh, that could be an accent. It's like, kind of like, I'm gonna say this out loud, the Leonard Bernstein effect. When you watch Leonard Bernstein, you're like, this is amazing. It's terrifically musical. Try turning off your eyes. Maybe don't do that. I sound like Zuckerberg now. I'm not quite closing your eye. Try closing your eyes and listening to the same performance.
Different.
Yeah, I'll guarantee you when we edit this up, probably not putting that one. I love a lot of what Bernstein did, but
Yes.
and something I appreciated about that was he was always going for it every single time. There was never a time where he wasn't with the orchestra or with, even playing in those, are they the Norton lectures at Harvard?
Maybe.
I think so. He's never not going for it. So I appreciate that a great deal. I would just think as like a clarinet player, if you're going to be doing accents, well, you hit piano harder. Is that basically what it is?
Well, I mean, I guess if you break it down to the very bare minimum, yes, you're basically striking a key harder to get it to sound louder or accented. But I think, again, the approach has to be contextual a little bit. So for instance, accent marks mean something different in a composer like, let's say, Bartók or Stravinsky than they might mean in Schubert, right? And the sound you would want, ideally, would not be the same. So markings, articulation markings, dynamic markings, all of those things, they're not set in stone. They're not fixed elements that we apply equally to all the composers. So if I see a forte marking, a loud marking in a composer like Prokofiev versus a composer like Mozart, I'm not going to take the same approach with my sound. How do I know this? Well, I know this because I happened to go to school for a long time and I learned things like that. I'm a doctor. And these are things that I try to pass along to students as well. It's like you have to think about, well, Mozart was playing on keyboard instruments that were just starting to have dynamic differences. Forte and piano, we called it a forte piano initially because it could play a little bit louder and a little bit softer based on touch. Much different from the instrument we have today, right? So when we try to play louder and softer in Mozart, it's more almost about the spirit of the sound, the energy behind it, as opposed to the sheer volume. Whereas when we get to a composer like Rachmaninoff, somebody 20th century who had the modern grand, they knew exactly what they could get from the instrument, and they were pretty specific. In Rachmaninoff, you might see markings that are quadruple forte and quadruple piano, and that's him urging the performer to go to the extremes of the instrument, essentially.
Well, it's not just that, I think, for me, that Rachmaninoff knows what the piano can do, but he knows all of music history before that.
Yeah,
You know, and so he's building on all of that.
Yeah.
Cristiano has said, I love duets. Is there a duet for piano and clarinet that you two like? Could you play a bit, if not asking much? I will say, I didn't bring my clarinet in today. It's a block from here, Cristiano. I'm not sorry. I have not been practicing as much as I would like to be lately. I keep thinking of it as the new job in it. About 14 months now, and I'm getting back to playing. I still played some gigs. Oh, JJ's here. Hi, JJ. It says Brahms is basically a duet. JJ has been playing Brahms sonatas. So your first sonata or second, JJ? Yeah, I told you, working on the whole stream thing. We're at Newland Conservatory today. You can't get in the building, so I can even tell you where we are. We're in Pierce Hall at New England Conservatory. You guys can't get in. JJ did the first Brahms sonata. And I want to say Michigan, and I probably owe you an email. A potential adult ed student.
Lovely.
Or maybe prep, I don't remember.
Okay.
But first sonata, did we ever play any of the Brahms sonatas together?
We must have, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know we did. I call it the Blizzard tour, where we got to Baltimore. We got past Baltimore. We got to like DC. I think we're on the Beltway, and we're like, we're gonna die with Charlie Powers.
Yep.
Now Pittsburgh Symphony, Pittsburgh Orchestra, Pittsburgh
Symphony?
Symphony. JJ says prep. Yes. Okay. Sorry. We can figure it out. Fill out that form. Fill it out. You emailing ee@necmusic.edu proved that this has any effect at all on human beings. I appreciate that. We got to the Beltway, and we're like, yeah, this is dangerous. We're gonna die. It's like 2:00 in the morning, and I said, well, let's call my aunt. She's back that way in like Baltimore, which at that point was at least an hour and a half away, maybe longer in that kind of snow. And we just had a discussion for a long time as we kept driving about like, should we stop? Are we going to die? And then it seemed to be okay. And I don't know where we stopped finally.
I mean, besides stopping to get new windshield wipers, I don't know if we stopped much at all. We had to get new windshield wipers, yeah, because of the snow, and they were just old.
Was it a rental, or was this your car?
No, this was my car.
Your car?
At the time, yeah. Yeah, and we took turns driving, and it was altogether terrifying.
Yeah. I remember sitting in the back and waking up and seeing a lot of snow. And I think you were driving, and Charlie was just like,
Yeah.
This is probably not good.
Yeah, I couldn't see the road at all because everything was just white. Trying to sort of follow based on what the truckers were doing on the highway.
Yeah, because following these thousands of pounds trucks is a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then when we got to, I feel like one of the concerts was snowed out.
I think we only ended up with one concert to play because of the weather. Because when this was going to North Carolina, they were suffering a huge power outage because of the ice and snow.
So in North Carolina, were we going to do something in Durham, and then we went to Winston-Salem? Did we play? I feel like we played at Winston-Salem.
I feel like we played at the North Carolina School for the Arts.
Yeah, where I went to
right?
high school.
That might have been the only concert we ended up being able to do.
All that effort.
Yeah, as a result of that. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops.
And we stayed at my parents' house, and they had no electricity.
Oh.
So you had to sleep in a sleeping bag with your clarinet because there was no heat in the
It
house.
was probably really cold.
It was cold.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
I'm not going to talk about whether I've ever done that for any other reason.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, like I remember the snow and being in the car and thinking, oh dear God.
Yep.
Cristiano is saying the story is a good theme for a duet. There's a real theme going on with Cristiano who wants a duet. So
Okay.
maybe another time.
Sure, yeah.
I'll be back in clarinet shape soon. Do you know Aaron Larget Kaplan, guitarist?
No, I don't think so.
He was in school when we were in school, classical guitar, or maybe before you got there, he graduated. He did his bachelor's in NEC, and then he's just been having a career. He has something like 12 albums out. And,
Wow.
and he and I have played a few duets, and I think we'll do something like this. Aaron, I know eventually you'll see this, so yes. But yeah, maybe we can drag you back here at some point in the future.
Sure.
And we can talk about like the problem areas of playing together.
Sure, yeah. That's a whole other discussion.
How to play in tune with clarinet. Stop playing with clarinet. Oh gosh. Well, yeah, like we've picked up some viewers, Cristiano and JJ. JJ, do you have any questions? Aimee Tsuchiya here. Dr. Aimee, Dr. Tsuchiya, or just Aimee, is a fantastic pianist. Aimee and I have not played recently. It's been at least 15 years, or did you ever come upstate?
I did your festival one summer. Do you remember?
What did we play?
Well, Charlie was there too. It was like a reunion, and we played like
Like Brahms?
nope. It was another trio.
Emiliano Pardo Tristan.
Nope.
We didn't do like a new piece. No, that
No.
would have been maybe the
Was
other
it-
pianist.
Could it be Glinka? Does that
possible.
sound familiar? Yeah,
That's possible.
yeah.
Okay.
Might have been something like that. And then Charlie and I played a piece.
You guys did Rachmaninoff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I feel like occasionally I'm going through hard drives looking for things and I see a video.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want me to ever send you that.
Okay.
They exist?
Yeah, I might have that video also.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's good. My memory is absolutely horrifically bad
Mine
when
too.
it comes to remembering like, oh, we played this together.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
glad-
I'm the same way. Actually, I mean, even pieces, I'll be like, I know I've played that piece, but then trying to name it, that can be a stopper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to be really good at that.
Yeah.
I used to play, did you ever know Jimmy Gaffigan? Now he's James Gaffigan.
Yes, yes. I met
It's not like he changed his name.
Right, right, right.
The only story I'm going to tell about Jimmy is perfectly clean. Jimmy and I oh God, such nerds. We were roommates fall of our freshman year here.
He was a bassoonist.
Bassoonist
right?
at that time, yes. And we would do like drop the needle test and like who's the orchestra.
Oh, wow.
Like, and I could generally get, if not exact, very close back then because what do the clarinets sound like? And I
Yeah.
only focus on what the clarinets sound like.
Right.
Oh, it sounds like Carl Eiser, Berlin.
Right.
Or it sounds like really musical, but my teacher would never put up with it, but stunningly in tune and very musical, Vienna Phil.
Okay.
You know, like
Yeah, yeah.
JJ says, as a pianist / accompanist, is there anything the solo instrument can do to make it easier to follow? Oh, like the clarinetist. He says, I'm very good with connecting just for other people. You mean, I think, and JJ, correct me, please. Everybody needs to get used to correcting me. I think JJ's asking, like, when we play as a clarinetist, are there things that we can do to make it easier for you to play with us if you're our accompanist? Or the term that was in vogue a few years ago, collaborative.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's still in vogue to some
When I
degree.
came back, I just kept hearing accompanist.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
What happened to the collaborative piano department?
Yeah, I think it's still collaborative piano.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. I will say it's worth, JJ, if you get a good pianist, you want to think of them as a collaborator because they're probably, if you just think of them as an accompanist and you just pay out the money, they're going to come in, they're going to leave, and they're not going to tell you the things you want to know about what you could do to fix what you're doing. So, all right, what could we do to make your life easier?
So I think as a generality, not just clarinet, but any instrument that I'd be playing with, I think that the more that the other player can like know for themselves, hopefully I didn't hit that microphone too hard, know for themselves about what they're doing with their phrase. So again, coming back to sort of phrasing and linearity in your playing, the more crafted that is in the mind of the player, the easier it is for the other person to play with them, because you get a sense of the bigger picture. It's kind of like if you drive, right? When you're driving a car, you're not looking, 2 inches in front of your hood. You're looking further down the road, so you can kind of see what is happening, what you can predict will be happening. Is that light about to turn yellow? Or, is that car over on the corner trying to pull into traffic, et cetera? So it's sort of the same idea, is that if the other player seems to be able to convey what they want with the phrase, that makes it easier for the person playing with them to stay with them, as opposed to any individual thing. Now, you can talk about like breathing and motion and cueing and things like that. All of those are very important as well and helpful. But I think it's, again, if you kind of think of it as like a long-term vision, those individual moments, if they're taken as just these individual things that I'm going to try to do to get you to come with me, it's harder for the person to be able to understand what you're going to do past that moment, right? And thinking past that moment actually keeps you together better. It's probably akin to dance as well. Like if you dance with a partner, ballroom or something like that, you can't just jerk the person around moment by moment. There has to be some sense of where the steps take you as a whole.
What you're telling me is that I need to improve my approach to dance.
Perhaps.
All right, you've mentioned dance and ice skating a lot.
Yeah, it's not because I do them.
Okay, you don't do either.
If that was your follow-up question.
Yeah, that's totally where I was headed.
No. But it's something I've just sort of observed. I've watched, when they do sort of like, let's say the Olympics are happening and they're featuring like, here's our pairs dancing ice skaters that, they're the US and they're competing for gold, blah, blah, blah. And they'll show like little backgrounds of them practicing. There's always those moments off the ice where they're rehearsing and you can see them sort of like kind of navigating through, again, sort of in slower motion, what the steps will be eventually
and
at
marking
full speed.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that applies to anything physical. I mean, especially something that has like an artistic bent to it, as opposed to just a moment-to-moment reaction to it.
My brain goes back to this question about what can we do, like what can a clarinetist do to make your life easier? And it sounds to me like what you're saying is think ahead, know what you're going to do. I will also say, I think tagging on to that, if you have an opinion, we want to hear it. And I'm not talking about your mouthy opinion. I am notoriously mouthy with my opinion. But like if you have a musical opinion, play it.
Yep.
What do you think it should sound like?
Yep.
But the minute you start going, oh, what are you doing? Where are you going? Everybody starts chasing each other.
Right.
I have gotten in so much trouble for decades telling students, no, please, dear God, do not cue anybody. And they're always like, oh, but my teacher said that I should cue and I should cue this way. And I'm like, well, for 10 minutes, I want you to ignore your teacher. And then you can go do what your teacher said. And I want you to just take a great breath, play this the way you think it should be played, ignore everybody in here. And 9 times out of 10, they go and play it. And I'm like, no, we don't matter. You just do what you need to do to make a beautiful sound. And they go, and play. And I'm like, great, you're going to do exactly the same thing, ignore everybody. And then I do one of these, like, all right, just play with them. And they go, and everybody plays with them. And I go, problem solved. And I move along and they think I'm a genius, but I do the same trick every single time. So everybody, I'm sneaky that way. To me, it's like that. it's the combination of knowing what it should sound like, where you're going, but also like I can't do your job for you.
Right.
And if I know my job and I just go about it, you can go, yeah, Chris, I prefer a slower tempo. I prefer if you play reasonably in tune. Chris, we're playing Brahms today. I don't know what the hell you're doing. Somehow that seems to work. JJ, did we answer your question? Did I just make Aimee go on a really long tangent that I forever blame Aimee for?
You can.
It says, oh, JJ says, yeah, the first time I was playing with piano, I was playing to them. And then she said, you play how you want, and they'll just follow. And after, it was just perfecto.
There you go.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the best collaborations, to come back to that word, are, you know, there's give and take. It's not like one person is just in charge, right?
Right.
But I think two people playing something together will hopefully have their own ideas about what should be happening, right? So then it can, maybe there's a, you know, the point of rehearsal is to kind of maybe navigate some of, if there are any differences of opinion. But I think you have to state your opinion before that can be navigated. So
Right,
yeah.
right. I like the ones when you have two people who are in really good, like I think of it as like clarinet shape, which means I've been practicing, I'm good. I know when I'm thinking about something, it's going to come out on the horn. And whoever the other person is, it's great. They're not thinking about the sandwich that they had that should have been shrimp, but was for some reason whitefish. They're not thinking about, I want the whitefish.
Okay.
You can tell I'm hungry, always. But they're just, they're paying attention and they have their opinion. But every second of the way, the opinion is like, you give them on the opinion a little bit and you go, yes, I'm doing this, but I'm doing it with a side of Aimee, like the Aimee version of this opinion.
Yeah.
And that's super fun. Like,
For sure.
I understand now, I didn't 20 years ago,
Sure.
why people can record the same piece with a different pianist like every 5 years. It's, oh, the recording's completely different. Ish for them,
right?
You know,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Yo-Yo to put out his 14th version of the box suites. But, you know, if they keep buying them, good for him.
Yeah.
He sounds really good.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know, I mean, there are pianists who put out solo recordings. The most famous, the Glenn Goldberg variations, right?
It's like 52, 54.
And then 80 something,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And it's like way fast. No, the first one is fast, right?
It's maybe, yeah, the second, the older he was, the slower he decided to explore the music. So it's almost twice as long as the original that he did when he was a young man. And, you know, Barenboim too. Barenboim recorded all of the Beethoven sonatas in the 70s, and then he just went on a big tour and did them all again, recorded them all again, maybe about 5-10 years ago. So, you know.
I definitely heard people opine that faster recordings in olden days, for me, olden days is anything from before I was born,
Yeah.
so 1979. I think probably for JJ and Cristiano, olden days might be anything in the 90s before. Please let us know, JJ, Cristiano, are we, not we, am I? Aimee always stays the same age. Some of these were played faster to fit on a side of an LP.
Sure.
I will say that first recording of Goldberg is so much fun. I was thinking, like, how can I play this on clarinet when I was in high school?
Yeah.
And my roommate, John Linty, who's the orbo player, and his parents were concert pianists, was like, you got to hear this. And then it was like, this guy introduced me to Glenn Gould, Michelangelo, maybe Pletnev playing, I want to say like Petrushka. That's a rockin' recording.
Yeah.
And Lipati. And then there's somebody else that I'm missing. He wasn't the one I blamed for my Wanda Landowska chromatic fantasy phase. But yeah, so he floats into Boston occasionally, and I'll introduce you if we ever see him. He's one of those people playing theorbo, so a continuo-ish instrument.
Yeah.
Very much, this is what it's going to sound like.
Yeah.
And as a result, he works all the time.
Yeah.
Here, the Met, whatever.
Yeah.
When did you figure that out?
It took a while, right?
Like, give me like an age-ish.
Boy, when I figured out I had to just be me.
Yeah, like really.
Yeah, probably, honestly, probably in my 30s, I would guess, right?
Okay, good. I feel better.
Okay, yeah.
It was years after my master's.
Yes.
Many years after my master's.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I think as students, and I speak for myself, maybe other students are different, but, we're studying with somebody that we want to learn from, we respect, and they have their opinions and ideas, right? So, we try to process that, take that in, try it, incorporate it best as we can often, right? And sometimes that matches exactly who we are, and sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then there's always this sort of inner tension in a way. It's not a bad thing. You're always taking in information and
Instead of WWJD, it's WWTMD. What would Tom Martin do?
Sure, yeah. Yeah. So, I think probably all of us have taken parts of how our teachers played that spoke to us, that really resonated. But I think we also, through time, start to become our own person more and more, right? And that's when I think it really starts to all kind of, come together better. Like I said, even with teaching, the more I've been teaching, the more I kind of understand, not just about like teaching, but about the music itself, about playing, about how I should play or would like to play. So it's all, I think, hopefully for most of us, fairly organic in that process, right? That we're always just kind of feeding off of what we experience and hear and do.
Would you say you had a teacher who was like just a towering figure in your own development, like a piano teacher, or not a piano teacher, and a towering figure in your own piano or musician development?
Yeah, I mean, there's more than one. Certainly, my 2 or 3 primary teachers when I was a student were hugely influential in how I listened and how I approached the instrument. But also, like, and I think maybe people don't do this as much anymore, but I listen to recordings constantly, and I would have pianists that I really loved the sound of, like whether they were recommended to me or people that I came upon and just trying to find recordings of repertoire that I was learning or enjoyed. And I think all of that too, I mean, I would sit around when I was, in middle school doing my math homework, but listening to Mozart piano concertos, stuff like that. I don't know how much people do that anymore.
I think they listen a ton, but we had the gatekeepers who curated who was going to record for Deutsche Grammophon or Beats, and now you can listen to some schmuck playing anything all the time, and I'm pointing at myself when I say schmuck, just so you know. And it's really hard to like separate the signal from the noise, I think. My students for years have I said, what are you listening to? Who are you listening to play this? And they're like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I don't know that name. Let me look. And it's somebody who might in a number of years be wonderful, but might also have a lot of problems. And I want them to have much higher, loftier goals. Or just like if you're going to model yourself after someone, you want them to be the best. I don't want anybody in the world to model their basketball playing after me. You go think about like Jordan. I don't know about these current guys. LeBron who. But like, I think that's a real problem. Like, I do appreciate that YouTube has a lot now, but there were a number of years. In fact, during COVID, I did this, where students would swing by my apartment, and there would be a little bag of CDs sitting out on my little front stoop, and on the little mat. And they would come, and Lucy my dog would notice somebody's at the front door and completely lose her mind, but they would take the CDs home. They would do what they need to do with the CDs, including listening to them.
Yes.
And then return them.
Yeah.
And then I knew that they got Harold right.
Yeah.
I knew that they got these wonderful players. And then I would sneak in some recordings of other people, like Heifetz playing anything in the world.
Yeah, right.
And say, can you play clarinet the way Heifetz plays a violin?
Right.
Probably not.
Right.
But like, now it's, oh, I love this piece. I heard this piece. Well, whoever's playing the piece is who's playing the piece.
Yeah. 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 So it's all terrific that we have access to all the stuff now, but it's also not so terrific for that reason, right? Because like, well, who can tell if you don't know what you're listening for? Then how can you choose? I have students, some of my younger students, who, when they go to YouTube, they prefer the YouTube recordings where it just shows the keyboard with laser lights coming out of it. I'm like, that may not be your best recording.
I have a friend, another doctor of piano.
Okay.
Tsuchiya Pushkar, who's wonderful if you ever meet her.
Okay.
MSM, I think. She records, at some point she just decided, I'm going to record for singers. She loved working with singers. And she just started recording songs in lots of different keys. And I think there are like hundreds of them. And then when COVID hit, I don't know if this was a COVID project or what, but like, that one person I know is wonderful. But still, she was living and breathing when she recorded it. Right. But when you're singing along with it, ain't no living and breathing and interaction. Right. I don't know, how do you point your students in like the direction of people who are maybe more worthy of being like used as patterns?
Well, I always ask, are you listening to pieces that you're learning? And then who are you listening to? And then if I have people in my mind that are my go-tos, those would be the ones I would refer them to, just so that they have a list. I mean, I always also encourage everyone to listen to more than one person.
Oh, yeah.
So even if you have a favorite person for, Chopin, there's lots of people who play Chopin well and with very different ideas sometimes.
Who do you like playing Chopin?
Well, I like
old school.
Old school. Well, I mean, everybody goes to Rubinstein.
Yeah.
Right?
I got some of those RCA Victor albums.
Yeah. But like, I really enjoy Tetzlaff, actually, and also Garrick Olson.
Oh, yeah.
Some of their Chopin is wonderful.
So that's medium school. Any new school players? I have a really hard time keeping up with like the new school.
Yeah, people. I do too, honestly. So yes, I'm gonna have to get back to you, I think, because there are a few names rattling around that are not fully set in my brain yet that I could just relay them to you.
You get like an amalgamation of them. Have you found that there are teachers who were really good at like Chopin, teaching Chopin, who maybe, and no names, please, dear God, no names, who are like amazing at teaching Chopin, but maybe not so much for Beethoven? Or is it?
I think we all have our strengths in terms of, composers that we connect with more, resonate with more, and they're maybe can teach better. Yeah. So yeah, I would say I've had teachers that were, like if they taught me, Schumann and Mozart and Ravel, I knew I was, it really was exciting for me because it clicked with me how they were approaching it, and other teachers more Schubert and Beethoven and maybe Brahms. So yeah, I don't think any one pianist will necessarily specialize in all the composers out there, right?
Yeah,
So
right. Not a pianist that you want to hear over and over and over again, right?
right, yeah.
Although, there are pianists that I think about, like when you say, oh, I want to hear preludes and fugues. To be quite honest, I would love to hear Sergei Shepkin play preludes and fugues again, because I haven't heard it in a long time. And I remember thinking, this guy really knows what the hell he's doing with these preludes and fugues. And there was a time where he was doing like books from memory. And I was just like, what is that? But I always want to go back, and Gould's one of those guys that I'm like, I'll listen to anything he does once just to see what kind of wackiness he's going to get into. Yeah. How did you, I mean, it's obvious that you spend a lot of time thinking about the piano. You spend a lot of time thinking about teaching the piano, like how to serve your students. How did you make a decision, like, that you wanted to get really good at teaching?
Well, I think when you start teaching, you want to be good at it because you want to be able to.
You want to be good at it. I mean, I also want to be really good at it, but I think we've both, let's say, experienced, maybe not as students, but we've both been exposed to teachers who didn't really care if they were really good at it.
Sure.
In the world.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And, I think that might be also case by case. So, if you have students that are receptive and responsive and want to be there, want to improve, want to,
That's something I really like about teaching adults.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
don't come to you because their parents told them to.
Right.
Their 100-year-old parents were like, when you're 60, son, you're going to go back to the clarinet.
Right. Yeah. So I think that plays a big part in how we are as teachers, right?
Yeah.
The interaction. But I think you tend to, especially maybe when you're first starting, maybe, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody. You want to try to do as well as your teachers did by you, or you don't want to start people off on the wrong foot, bad habits, etc., all that kind of stuff.
Like a bit of giving back kind of thing. I remember Bob Listokin at the North Carolina School of the Arts. Beautiful player, but oh my goodness, as a teacher. And so patient with me, and patient with some other people too. Yeah. There's actually somebody who occasionally will get in the YouTube chat here, and YouTube chat and Twitch chat and Facebook. Please feel free to ask questions, comment, say non sequiturs. But Bob Listokin, one of his students, who actually then came here and studied with Tom too at the same time I did. He was just such a patient man. Yeah. But unbelievably high standards. So like, I think often, okay, really what would Bob Listokin do? Right. What's an approach, or can I be that good at a human being, good a teacher, maybe not teach it exactly the same way he does. Right. But just like how much time he spent doing that. Yeah. And I remember there are things about like Tom Martin's teaching that he was, I totally different kind of teacher and person, and still incredibly effective. And I will think like, well, what would Tom's approach be to this? Always I end up with a third approach. Sure. Yeah. But like, those are like the two, I have two North Stars. Yeah. And I'm trying to figure out, like, because they're not polar opposites, but they're very different ends of the spectrum. Yeah. And I'm thinking, can I get the best of both of those? Yeah. Right. It's not something, teaching I don't think is something that you just are good at. I don't think anybody's really good at it. And it's quite apparent to me from your students, the way they talk and the way you talk, that you're good at it. Was how long have you been doing it? Were you doing it when you were in school? Were you also teaching, or you got out of school and what, I guess I got to learn this?
Well, interestingly, the very first experience I had teaching was my senior year of high school. I had another area piano teacher took me sort of as a, I don't want to say apprentice, but like an assistant in her studio.
That's an apprentice.
Yeah. So I would help her teach some of her younger students. And then I think it was just something I picked up doing when I was doing my graduate school work, like just as a job that I would take on the side, right? So that's, in my early 20s.
Were you
like
any
that.
good in your early 20s?
Probably not.
Did you ruin a generation of pianists?
Yeah, just destroyed them. No, I think because you don't really, at that age, I don't think you necessarily understand all the things that go into teaching that we learn maybe by the fact of teaching. There's a lot of experiential learning that comes from teaching. So there are things that I remembered when I was a young teacher, I remembered I had to do as a student. So those were the things I was trying to pass along, but then trying to understand like the micro issues or the individualized issues that any one person has, that I think comes with time and practice, just like anything that we spend time doing. Yeah.
I think there are people, we've all heard those who can do, those who can't teach.
Right.
And I feel like now, they're wildly different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like those who can't, if you can't figure out how to do it at least once or how to do it multiple times, I don't know if you're going to be able to teach it.
Yeah.
But I do know a lot of people who can do the thing who cannot teach worth a damn.
Yeah.
And then I know a lot of people I know a number of people who do the thing and then they go, oh, I know how to do that. And I know how to guide somebody else to do that. I don't want to spend my time just keeping my chops at that level so I can play Firebird variation at the drop of a hat any moment. And I think that's interesting. But I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you wish? This one's an annoying question. Is there anything you wish you had learned earlier, like when you were really young?
I don't know. When I was really young?
Or, maybe just, you can do what you want. You can play the instrument the way you want. I wish I had learned that when I was like 22.
Sure.
Because I think I would, I think it would, I don't know what would happen. I would have enjoyed it quite a bit more.
Yeah.
My career probably would be the same, but I think there would be long stretches where I was like a happier human being.
Yeah. Right. It's hard to assess because, again, there were probably hours I could have saved practicing because I wasn't necessarily practicing as efficiently as possible.
Could have been playing like Halo or something.
Exactly. But, so that time could have gone into, learning more repertoire or doing something else, but I think all of it is part and parcel. So, the things that I did learn to do when I was younger kind of obviously fed into my approach to the instrument now. So, it took a while to learn how to control tone or to understand a phrase or something like that. It's hard to know whether those are things that could have been learned earlier. Some of those things, I think it depends on us as individuals.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to cover before I turn us off and tear down all the equipment? The chat's being a little slow this evening. JJ and Cristiano are really covering it. I think one of the cameras may have just
turned off,
died, or something. I don't know. The piano, the keyboard one. So it's
gone.
frozen. Yeah,
oh, okay.
You're there. But,
okay.
That one's frozen. Cristiano said listening to this was awesome.
Oh, lovely.
That's really nice.
That's great to hear.
You're quite welcome, Christiana. Thanks for coming by, and keep coming by. Nothing else?
Not off
No?
the top of my head.
And
No.
no questions from the chat. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Pleasure.
We're gonna get this going. And
Okay.
people are gonna find out that NEC knows what the hell they're doing when it comes to educating musicians. I hope they don't find out that I have a hard time keeping my language completely PG. But we'll get there. If I dazzle everybody with enough techno stuff, maybe they won't notice that my language is a
Laser
little
lights, I think, is the way to go.
lazy. Yeah. Well, if I can get like a floating thing, working on it. We'll have some kind of. There is a pianist she's wonderful. She's a jazz pianist. She went completely online during COVID, playing jazz tunes and doing the whole busking thing. I think she's on YouTube now. Sanga Nuna. Nuna is like older sister, but I think that's her thing. Go listen to her. She's great. And she has multiple cameras and like automated while she's playing, it'll switch cameras, but then some of the cameras are moving.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not there. I'm not there. And if I get there, we will have a lot of other things that happen first.
Right. Well, some of those, I feel like some of those even tablets have a thing where they'll follow you.
Oh yeah. No,
Right.
we're gonna have. I have a camera that's not on the way. I'm waiting for approvals. Approval people, please approve. That will follow 4K camera. So we can follow, because what we're gonna do is we have an orchestra that we're gonna live stream with.
Ooh, nice.
And we want you to be able to follow the conductor as he moves through and it's going to get wild. So you guys should show up.
Yeah.
And I should learn how to use the chat moderation tools before then. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much. Hopefully this was useful to people. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. My
Okay,
pleasure.
bye guys. I have to hit the right button.